Evil forces have got Australia in its sights. Listen to this video now. Good afternoon, it's Graham Healy, Rise Up Australia and Fit for Christ Ministries. We've reached a pivotal point in Australia, and as you can see behind me, the image on the screen, you've got the Middle Eastern radicals and you've got the Chinese Communist government with Australia in its sights. They've had New Zealand in its sights as well. But we had on last Sunday, which was yesterday, the 3rd of August 2025, write that date down in your diary, we had this massive protest, which is basically no more than pro-Hamas, so-called free Palestine and all the rest of it. The ignorance on these subjects is just absolutely outstanding, but I'm not going to rave on around that. Rowan Dean did a very good summary on Sky News, and I must admit Sky News is probably the equivalent of Fox in America is Sky News here in Australia. They actually tell you the truth. But the reality is the race is on to convert Australia to Islam and or communism or both, because these ideologies have the same mentality. One's a little bit more, I won't say they're any more violent than each other. One's more subtle and one's more aggressive. And a pivotal point's been reached yesterday, Sunday, the 3rd of August, and I'll tell you why. And I think a few things are going to change. So this is sort of like a prophetic update as well. Now, just quickly, I'm just looking at Exodus, and I'm not turning this into a biblical lesson, but we just want to get a bit of perspective on it. Moses took the people of Israel out of Egypt. Now, just think about the area we're talking about, 1400 BC, right? Now, you add 2000 AD, which is the after death of Christ, and you've got 3,400 years. So the history of the Jewish people in the Middle East at least is 3,400 years history. Now, the amount of ignorance that you hear out there about, that Israel has no right to its own land is about the equivalent of telling Aboriginal people in Australia they have no right to live in Australia. So this sort of twisted half-wit mentality is circulating everywhere. So we just want to set the record straight. And believe you me, Xi Jinping and the Ayatollahs over in Iran and their proxies, which are all the terrorist organisations, the PLO, we're at Brian Tamaki's stake in the ground on Sunday at Queen's Park in Brisbane, and a whole lot of basically pro-terrorists turned up with their Hamas turbans on, the whole box and dice. A few hundred of them actually, blowing their trumpets and trying to interrupt our assembly there. And I just found this is Australia. This isn't the Middle East. What has this got? Why are these people here? And why are they trying to disrupt our society here? And why is the government, this pathetic government that we've got, because we had no opposition, why is this being allowed? Why are they allowed to go onto the Sydney Harbour Bridge with obviously corrupted, woke judges? And why are judges having anything to do with what decisions are supposed to be made by the government, whether or not you can cross the bridge with a anti-Israel, pro-Hamas, putting up images of the Ayatollahs and all this sort of stuff, bringing that, I'll state it now, bringing that curse to Australia. Now, it's a curse, and I'll tell you why in a second. Now, the thing is, this is what I'm announcing on this video, and I've sent the message out. Prophetically speaking, we're at a pivotal point. We're at a pivotal point in Australia. And just like in the scriptures where Jehu was anointed and appointed by the prophet Elijah to basically take back the kingdom, and when he was a bit, Jehu was quite a He was a bit like Donald Trump in many respects, except he was, I think, he was a wilder version than Donald Trump. He was actually a war general, and so he would him and his troops would rumble into the various towns in the Middle East, and he'd call out, "Are you for me or are you against me?" And if they were for him, he'd get them on board, and if they were against him, he'd just completely wipe them out. And eventually, Jehu got to Jezebel, which was the most evil queen, represents everything that's evil. He got to that particular city. And he told the eunuchs to throw Jezebel off the balcony, which they did, and he trampled her underfoot. And then, as the biblical story goes, I mean, you can look it up, use AI to look it up if you wanted. The biblical story goes that Jezebel's body was ripped by the dogs to pieces, and all they found was, I think they found her hand and a skull. That's about all that was left. So that was also prophesied what would happen to her. So the evil was totally destroyed by the Lord. Now, I'm telling you this. I was having a talk to a friend of mine who just happens to be the founder of Church and State. And I said to him, what the hell's going on with these politicians in Australia? They suddenly turned anti-Semitic. And if they weren't directly anti-Semitic, they're indirectly anti-Semitic. And I said, this is totally against the scriptures. As the Lord says, those who bless Israel will be blessed. Those who curse Israel will be cursed. Now, you think about that very carefully. Those who bless Israel will be blessed. Those who curse Israel will be cursed. Now, unfortunately for this current government of Australia, they are cursed according to the biblical mandates, right? And the mandates, the only really mandates that really count as the biblical ones, right? So we're in the middle of a pivotal point, spiritual warfare point, and for that matter, so is the UK Prime Minister. These people who are recognising Palestine as the only state where that's going to lead is that you're basically recognising Palestine. They are then, therefore, by default, they're recognising the terrorist organisations which govern Palestine. So, remember Yasser Arafat, the terrorist who formed Palestine, and Palestine actually didn't exist. It was just a desert area there, and the people of Israel have always done the right thing regarding their Arab nations around them, unless they were attacked. And they've been attacked consistently from day one, in 1948, when they were re-established in Jerusalem, which is their heritage. It's a 3,400 year plus heritage there. All the artifacts are there, all Jewish. The buildings, the coins, the history from all the Moses and all that through. And for that matter, even the Arab inheritance, or the Arab, when you trace the Arab race back, they go back to Ishmael, who happened to be the illegitimate son of Abraham. So the history's all tied up there together. So the Jewish nation has every right to be in their homeland. It's laughable when you listen to some of the arguments that come out, which just don't even make sense. As I say again, it's a bit like walking up to an Aboriginal person and say you don't belong in Australia. That's like walking up to a Jew and say you don't belong in Jerusalem, for goodness sake. So anyway, by these Western woke prime ministers, Albanese, he's a spineless jellyfish. We all know that. He's an embarrassment to any decent Australia, and he only got in on 34% of the vote. And the only reason he got in is because we didn't have an opposition. The opposition was turning woke, so we didn't have a conservative opposition. That's the reason. It's not because he's some sort of guru or smart guy or anything. He isn't. We got Albanese. Then we've got Starmer, as his name's in UK. I mean, I don't even bother remembering these characters' names because they're so insignificant. And then you've got Macron in France, and then you've got the guy that's taken over in Canada, is it Starmer? I'm not certain who it is. He's a complete idiot, but he's been a plant by the so-called Third World Order and all this sort of stuff, the communists and what have you. So these characters that have stood up and said, okay, we're going to recognise Palestine, therefore recognising the terrorists who basically go around and kill people and chop heads off. They're basically a death cult. So you can't negotiate with a death cult. You try that. Good luck. Those people who are pro-Palestine in Australia, go over the Middle East. Just go over there and, walk around the land where you're talking about and you'll watch that, you won't last 10 minutes over there. And then regarding all the aid, the so-called aid that's not getting through to the people there, well, who's stopping that aid from getting through? Well, United Nations are stopping it for a start. And secondly, Hamas stop it. Really, Hamas they use it as bargaining tools for, basically it's just totally and utterly corrupted. And then Hamas and what have you, they use it. They know how the Westerners think. And the Westerners just play, most of the West, or some of the Westerners anyhow, play into Hamas's hands. See, this is just an ongoing thing they've done all these years. So, where are we with all this? Okay, let's just have a quick look. I'll just read. Okay, there's Moses there, as you can see. You don't need a great deal of intelligence to say that the history of the Holy Land belongs to the Jews. Yes, there is the Arabs there, but the Jewish nation isn't exactly what you call a big nation there. They're powerful, but the Arab nation around them, because they're Islamic, they've tried to wipe out the very Jews that helped the Islamic nations establish. And you can read in the Quran, you can read this story where Muhammad himself was actually educated by the Jews initially. When you have a look at Mecca and go through all that history, just look it up and just get some background on it, where you realise that, it's just really the Arab nations and the Jewish nations are actually related. They're cousins, basically, distant cousins. So, I've just gone on to the American Jewish Committee. This is in the US. And I'll just read this out to you so you'll understand a little bit. Israel is fighting a 7-front war against the Iranian regime and its terror proxies, which are Hamas, Houthis, Hezbollah, and more. Israel launched Operation Rising Line on the 12th of June 2025 to prevent the imminent and existential threat of nuclear Iran, destroying nuclear, military, and other strategic targets. In retaliation, the Iranian regime fired hundreds of ballistic missiles and drones at Israel, killing 30 civilians and injuring hundreds. On the 21st of June, the US carried out a precision airstrikes of Iran nuclear sites at Fordo, Natanz, and Ifhan, I think it is. A ceasefire between Iran and Israel, brokered by the US, was reached on the 23rd after 12 days of war, following Hamas's October 7 massacre. The terror group is still holding 50 men and women, including 2 American captives in Gaza. So in that process, by the way, on October 7, they slaughtered well in excess of 1,000. I think it was 1,200 Israelis. So, every country, wherever you are, if some invader comes into the borders and slaughters over 1,000 people, you have a right to defend yourself and then neutralise the situation. Correct? On this website, which is ajc.org /Israel Hamas war, they give you all the answers to the questions, regarding the common myths about aid, what is, Hezbollah and all this, Israel and war updates. It gives you that. It gives you the truth, not all the BS that's going on there. So just go and read that, and we'll get back to our other little picture here. So where are we prophetically in Australia? This is the main purpose of this video. Number one, Brian Tamaki came out from New Zealand to put a stake in the ground in Brisbane He's down at the Gold Coast at the moment. He's going to the UK, and I believe he'll wind up going to the US, meeting up with Donald Trump, and doing a haka on the grounds of the White House. I believe I'll see that very, very shortly. So getting back to Australia, this is what's going to happen. Prophetically, mark it in your diary, guarantee it. Number one, Albo's gone. He's already been removed spiritually by the Lord. He's out. He's finished. I believe, and have said this for some time now, since the last election, that he'll be gone by October, November this year, 2025. Just to repeat that, Albanese will be gone by October, November this year, 2025. Now, what's going to happen to the government of Australia? Well, Albanese and his crew have gone down a far worse track than the Whitlam era. Remember when Whitlam was removed? But of course, we can't rely on the Governor General because she's woke as well. So something else is going to happen to remove Albo. It may be an external event. It may be, who knows? Haven't seen that yet. But what I have seen is that the government will be thrown into a double dissolution, October, November 2025 this year, and we will have a referendum on free speech. Now, I saw that about 6 months ago, actually. No, the last election, is that 6 months ago? Probably about May this year, right? So when Brian Tamaki came out here, his main pivot point was actually free speech. So free speech is so critical. So it's got to be installed into the Constitution. Now, who's going to be the future leader of Australia? Well, I had a conversation at this demonstration or this meeting, public meeting on Sunday. I had a talk to a mate of mine who's from Rodney Howard-Browne's church in Canada, prophetically very anointed. I won't mention his name here for security reasons. And what we saw was this. Well, he saw. I was thinking, I thought, who's the leader for Australia? Because Australia needs a Donald Trump, and I can't see him. I can't see anyone in the political arena that's the future pivotal Donald Trump for Australia. But Mark, I'll say his first name, Mark, said to me that he said he's not a politician. God's got his hand on a leader for Australia, but he's not a politician, but he's a man of great influence over politics. So one would think, I'm just assuming without preempting anything, that he may be a minister, he may be a businessman, he's definitely got to be a person of influence who will be raised up very shortly. He's hidden at the moment, but he will appear and start steering the whole government organisations back on track. So what's going to happen to the Albanese government, how they're going to be thrown into a double dissolution? Look, I don't know the legalities of all that. A lot of people think they do. A lot of people study politics and that. All I'm saying is what I'm seeing in the spirit. Albanese be gone by October, November this year, and there'll be a double dissolution called, and there will be a reformation, but regarding referendum. That's what I was trying to think of. Again, all these words in my mind. So referendum regarding free speech. So that's it. We're at a pivotal point, and each one. This is the other thing. Each person or each prime minister who has stood against Israel, each prime minister, this is the real warning, each prime minister, including Albanese and all his sleazy crew, each person who stood against Israel, each person who's been anti-Semitic, each person who's been woke, the whole woke agenda, and that's to destroy the society that's built through Judeo-Christian foundations, will be removed. They will be removed, and they're going to be removed rapidly. Keir Starmer, or whatever his name is in the US, I don't pay attention to him because they're just complete morons. So in the UK, Keir Starmer is going to be replaced by Nigel Farage. Boom, he's gone. He is good as gone. In France, that so-called prime minister, he's gone as well. And in Canada, the Prime Minister of Canada, or the one who's been put in as Prime Minister, there's a whole narrative behind that, and I won't call him a prime, but he is at the moment. He's as good as gone. So each one of these people who've stood up against Israel, they want to recognise the terrorists, they're gone. They will be removed and replaced, and there'll be an alternative government formed. Now, Australia's a difficult one because we're supposedly the land of the great south, land of the Holy Spirit, as it's been prophesied. So I've got no question that God's got his hand on this, and I believe that with Brian Tamaki was basically a pivotal point in itself. There was a stake in the ground there on last Sunday, I'll just repeat the date again, the 4th of August 2025, and Dylan Oakley, a mate of mine, Dylan Oakley, who's an evangelist, he gave an absolutely tremendous land-breaking speech, and God's hand is upon Dylan for a time such as this. And there was Brian Tamaki's son, Samuel Tamaki, and there was another guy, I can't remember his name, but he stood up against the anti-Israel protests in Sydney all on his own. He's an Anglican reverend. So that stake in the ground's there, and the pivotal point has been placed, and the Lord is not mucking around. He's removing those who are against him, and he's going to assert his godly authority, really. That's what I'm saying. That the church will start to rise up. This is what Brian Tamaki was pushing via the unction of the Holy Ghost. But the church is really the people, the Christians in the churches in Australia, there's a lot of them. And there's, rather than I'm all for, praise and worship and all that, but there's got to be where they take that from outside the four walls of the church into the street and stand up for Judeo-Christian rights, stand up for the rights of, free speech and all the rest of it, and stop this anti-Christian, anti-Jewish theme that's taken over Australia. And, it's time to stand up. And it's not only time for the ones that are out in the leading edge that stand up, but it's time for the majority of the church members to be activated and back up the movement that is actually re-establishing the Christian faith as our foundation for Australia and all these other countries, the UK, France, and Canada. And that will, in very quickly, that will realign with what Donald Trump's doing in the US. So at the moment, we've been, Albanese's made us almost an enemy of the US, which is just insane. So a lot of people want to remember back to World War II and all the other different conflicts around the world where basically, if Australia without the big brother US, we're stuffed as far as military capacity is concerned. So that relationship in a time such as this has got to be reinforced to the nth degree. We can't defend ourselves. There's no question. We've got Dad's army in charge at the moment. So that's Graham Healy over and out. I hope that gives you a little bit of an insight. So I'll just repeat what of the main thing of the video is simply this. We're at a pivotal point on the 4th, which is Monday, the 4th of August 2025. Albanese will be removed because of his stance against Israel, because of his stance, which is anti-Semitic really, and pro-Hamas. That's what it is. If you're pro-Palestine, you're pro-Hamas. You're pro all their proxies who govern those particular Arab states. Israel's the only state that's actually holding back the terrorists. So you see the crime that's increasing in Australia down in Melbourne, machetes, all this sort of. This is all Islamic stuff, right? It's not. It was never happened here in Australia before, right? So you just got to think about that. Then these other countries like the UK, Nigel Farage will be the Prime Minister there. And I don't know what's going to happen to France, but certainly the French Prime Minister's got to go. And the Canadian Prime Minister is just, he's a proxy. He's been put in there by the so-called elites, the woke people in the background. He's got to go as well. So I think in the next 6 months, we're going to see a lot of these little woke prime ministers fall, because their policies are actually making them fall anyhow, because they're anti-Christian, basically. They're all anti-Christian, and including Albanese, he's anti-Christian. There's no question about that. So God's moving his hand, and those people are going to be for or against Israel, and those who are for. I'll just leave it on this. Remember Jehu in the Bible. He cried out as he marched through these various towns, anointed by God to be the future king of Israel, and destroyed the evil at the time, which means Jezebel, right? Read about it in the Bible, look it up on AI. Basically, his statement is, and I want you to just think about this in your own mind, are you for me or against me? That was a cry of the Lord through Jehu. And that means, are you for Israel or are you against them? Now, if you're against them, I don't care who you are, if you're a politician, you're a big timer, you're a big businessman, or whatever you are, if you're against Israel, you're against God. You're cursed by God automatically, because the scriptures clearly state those who bless Israel will be blessed, those who curse Israel will be cursed. Now, I'm not saying that there isn't, mistakes made either side of the continuum, but I'm talking about the religious underpinning of these groups. So the religious underpinning of Israel is Jewish, and Jesus was a Jew. So you don't need to know any more than that. So you want to erode the very foundation that Australia was built on, the New Zealand was built on, the UK was built on, basically, Canada and these other countries originally were built on the Judeo-Christian belief, which gives them prosperity because they align themselves with the Ten Commandments, even, do unto others as you would have them do unto you, the philosophy of love your neighbor, and all that, and replace it with the, these other evil ideologies and cults, especially the terrorism death cults. You want to replace it with that. You're going to get the chaos that's happening in Australia at the moment. So that's Graham Healy over and out. Remember, are you for Israel or against Israel will determine where you're going in the future regarding political values as well. I give a forewarning now, and I have done that to several politicians, and I'm repeating it. If you're against Israel, your political career is over, because you're actually anti how Australia was built in its constitution. Everything was based on the Christian Bible, for goodness sake. Wake up to yourselves. Okay, that's my little announcement. I hope that helps some people. And, this information is all available on the internet for you to look up, but it just depends where someone's sitting spiritually as to what they actually see. So Graham Healy over and out from Rise Up Australia and Fit for Christ Ministries. We're at a pivotal point. In 6 months' time, a lot of things are going to change, and expect to see a double dissolution and a referendum on free speech coming up very, very shortly, within 6 months, I'd say. So we'll see if that bears fruit. And I've made a statement, and we'll see how that goes. Okay, Graham Healy over and out. Okay, just repeating that, just remember what I said. Within 6 months, Albanese will be removed, and even globally, these other woke prime ministers will be removed. We'll have a double dissolution in Australia and a referendum on free speech. And I made that statement about 6 months ago anyhow, but we've just reiterated it on Monday, the 4th of August 2025. Put it in your diary. It's going to happen as sure as I'm standing here. Okay, Graham Healy over and out. Hope you enjoyed the video.